Throughout history, we know that many nations have changed their religions. People who are now Muslims or Christians were once pagans, Zoroastrians, Buddhists, or Hindus. This is a familiar topic in world history. However, it's rare to come across an example of a Christian or Muslim country switching its religion to the other side. Such instances are seldom found in history books, and even then these conversions often occurred through the imposition of colonial powers rather than by choice. But today we are going to talk about one of the exceptions to this rule. Could England, one of the largest Catholic kingdoms of the Middle Ages, have really converted to Islam? Historically, this may seem improbable. However, the possibility of England turning to Islam came up not once but twice in medieval England, which is quite surprising. In this video, we will discuss these two instances, analyze how these historical processes unfolded, and evaluate how reliable these claims really are. Finally, we will answer the question, could England really have converted to Islam? If you're ready, let's begin. We're traveling back to England in the 1060s. The first historical figure we encounter is King Henry II of England. Henry was one of the most influential rulers of medieval Europe. During his reign from 1150 to 1189, he extended his control over parts of Wales, Ireland, and Scotland, and strengthened English rule in France. Through his cultural and economic reforms, Henry transformed England into a more powerful kingdom than it had ever been. However, a decision Henry made in 1161 set off a chain of events that would deeply impact England's history. After the death of his Archbishop, Becket in 1161, Henry appointed one of his most trusted men, Chancellor Thomas Becket, to fill the position, aiming to increase his influence over the church. But soon after the appointment, things began to unravel. Becket clashed with the king and refused to act according to his will. He changed his lifestyle and declared himself the holy defender of the church. This went completely against Henry's plans to bring the church under his control. This conflict became known in English history as the Becket dispute. The disagreement between Henry and Becket became increasingly personal and, by nature, took on an international dimension. Henry was a stubborn king who harbored resentment toward Becket, while Becket was an ambitious and highly political clergyman. Neither was willing to back down, and both sought the support of other nations and institutions across Europe. One such figure was Pope Alexander III. During this process, both Henry and Becket corresponded with the Pope. While the Pope did not openly show his support, he was clearly sympathetic to Becket and ignored Henry's demands. In response, Henry adopted a more aggressive approach. In a letter to the Pope, he stated that he would rather accept an invitation from Nur ad-Din than allow Becket to remain as Archbishop of Canterbury. For the time, this was a bold and impressive threat. But what did Henry's statement actually mean? Who was Nur ad-Din, and what kind of invitation might he have extended to the king? Let's take a moment to explore this. Nur ad-Din Mahmud was the ruler of the Zengid dynasty, whose territories stretched across modern-day Syria and Iraq, far from Henry's kingdom. He was a man who had dedicated his life to fighting the Crusaders, and his efforts extended beyond his region. He sent letters to distant kingdoms, inviting their rulers to convert to Islam. Although Nur ad-Din and Henry never met, letters were exchanged between them, and in all of these correspondences, Nur ad-Din invited Henry to accept Islam. Henry's mention of Nur ad-Din's call in his letter to the Pope was a veiled reference to his consideration of converting to Islam, a threat that escalated tensions between England and the Catholic Church. But how serious was Henry about this? Would he have truly converted to Islam if the issue with Becket had remained unresolved? We'll never know for certain because in 1170, Becket was killed by the king's knights, which partially resolved one of the greatest crises in English history. Becket had achieved his goal, so Henry no longer needed to press his threat. That being said, another interesting fact about Henry is that he was always relatively tolerant towards Islam. He welcomed scholars from Sicily, Italy, and Andalusia into his court, and even learned a little Arabic. He was well-versed in Arab culture and appreciated the intellectual contributions of this civilization. In fact, he even paid a considerable amount to have some Arabic texts translated into Latin. The truth is, if England had converted to Islam, the Pope would undoubtedly have used his power to counter it. Even if Henry IV had taken the necessary steps to embrace Islam, it is very likely that the effort would have ultimately failed. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel.